Welcome back to the channel, guys. I know a lot of you guys have built this system. You've seen me build it in the garage 2 or 3 weeks ago. The tutorials on my channel, but now it's time we bring it outside and we actually put it into play. So these systems are pretty simple in design. The real magic is the knowledge on how to operate it properly, and the first step is setting it up for success. All right, so one of the most important steps when you're going to fill your rain gutters or any container you're growing in actually is going to be your growing medium. Now, I know you guys are tired of hearing me say it, but it's important that everyone understands the importance of a great growing medium and the difference it makes in the performance of anything you grow. So what I have here is reused soilless mix based on peat moss. It's got perlite in, as you can see, these little white beads. So normally when we buy these mixes, they have about 15% perlite. Now I've got some organic matter mixed in there because the soil is actually being reused. Now on the question that I get a lot, which is, should I reuse or can I reuse the soil in my rain gutters each year? The answer is absolutely yes. I strongly suggest that you keep the same soil. Not only is it labor intensive to change, it's expensive and you get no benefits from that. Now this soil is actually alive. It's got microbes in, it's got all kinds of small creatures in, so it's basically an organically alive soil. Now when we get it brand new in the bale, it's actually inert, so this is going to be performing better than anything brand new out of the bale, considering you can keep the correct characteristics of drainage, water retention, lightness of the soil, and so on. So as you grow, as you add food, as small bits of plants fall in there and biodegrade, this soil is actually going to change composition. But as you'll see, growing in this for a couple of years, every year your soil level is going to go down a little bit because we grow organically. Peat moss is an organic input. So because of that, it's going to biodegrade. So each spring we're going to need to top up a little bit of soil, and that's going to maintain the composition of our soil, so you don't really have to worry about that. I've been growing the same peat moss mixtures for sometimes close to 10 years. The performance is still great, the texture is still great, so that's nothing to worry about there. Make sure you get a great growing medium, peat moss based, coconut based. Now in your mini you should be able to fit about 2 cubic feet or so, a little less, but 2 cubic feet will give you a bit of margin, so you make sure not to run out. Worst comes to worst, you can fill 2 or 3 more flower pots or flower containers with the rest of the mixture. Anyway, I'm sure as soon as you try these soilless mixes, you will be absolutely hooked. All right, so the next step in preparing our mini to grow amazing plants is going to be to incorporate some fertilizer into that growing medium. Now, you guys remember I told you it's reused, so there's probably a little bit of fertilizer in there, but we know that it's mostly depleted. So in order to get a fresh start, we're going to put a fresh dose of fertilizer. That is called, by the way, incorporating a starter charge or a base charge. We do that on the farm as well. It's super useful. 1, so that your plants get food in the medium directly. 2, so that your plants encounter a good mineral background when they emerge or when you transplant them. You're going to hear me use the term good mineral background a lot this season, and it's very important that your plants are stimulated to grow right from the start. So we're going to be incorporating fertilizer in there, and that's going to take care of that problem for us. The third reason why we want to incorporate a starter charge is that since we're using a granular or a solid fertilizer, phosphorus is a nutrient that does not move in the soil. So it's basically going to stay right where you put it, and if it's available for plants to use, it'll be used. If not, it won't be used. So plants use phosphorus for rooting, they use it for flowers, for fruits. So we want phosphorus available for our plant roots. So we're going to incorporate it directly into the soil. Now, if you ask me, how do you do that on the farm? Since you guys are fertigating, well, liquid phosphorus is actually something that will percolate through the soil. But in solid form like this, we need to do the job ourselves. So beginning of the season, especially when you're setting up new units, is the ideal moment to do that. So in order to illustrate the quantities, I get lots of questions on quantities. In order to illustrate that, I've taken a Philadelphia cream cheese 500-gram pot, so you guys get a good idea. This is a common item that everyone knows. It's available everywhere. Worst comes to worst, get yourself some bagels, get yourself some cream cheese, eat them, and then you'll have a container for measuring your fertilizer. So the fertilizer we're going to use is a mix of a 532 and 468, which gives us about a 555, so a balanced fertilizer. We're going to take that cup, we're going to fill it all the way to the rim, and we're going to incorporate that into our 20-gallon tote full of growing medium, and we're going to put another half in there. So 1.5 times 500 grams. So that should be about 750 grams or so. So if you see on top, it's right there. Now I'm going to get the camera closer, show you guys how I mix this with the shovel, and then we'll be ready to go on to step number 3. All right, so grab your shovel. One trick or tip I can give you guys is do not wet the soilless mix until you've actually done everything. So mixing, incorporating fertilizer, even before putting it in the rain gutters. Don't wet it. You can actually moisten it a little bit if you want, but you have to know that these pellets are going to soak up water and return to their original form pretty quickly. So go in, go in. So we just go in chopping motions like this, bringing the fertilizer back to us and then pushing away, making sure that we go all the way to the bottom of the tote. And that's why I tell you guys not to moisten it. If it's moist, you won't be able to go at the bottom of the tote. You will not be able to properly mix, and you'll have some parts of your tote that have more concentrated fertilizer than others, which will give you uneven results. Make sure you hit all the corners. So we just keep mixing this. As you can see, we can't even see these pellets in there. Once it's wet, we'll actually see them because they'll soak water and they have a different color. But in the meanwhile, we've got let's call it a pretty light load of fertilizer in there. And the reason you don't want to put more fertilizer than we did is you don't want it to cake. You don't want the soil to cake on top. So if you've got too much fertilizer in there, your soil is going to cake, and it's going to be very difficult for plants to push through, grow, or even emerge. So as plants growing from seed. So make sure you hit all the corners. As you can see, it's lightweight. It's easy to actually go all the way to the bottom of the tote and then bring all of that stuff back up and flip. So at this point, I think we've got a pretty well mixed fertilizer and soil mix. So we're going to go ahead to step number 4, which is filling our gutters. All right, so now we're getting to the fun part, or the funner part of doing these things, which is just filling up the gutters. I'm going to show you guys how to do this. I'm going to show you what level to fill them up at and what to do once they're filled. So simple stuff that I use to do this is these are actually, well, this is a bucket for cut flowers. So we had that on the farm. So, but you can take any container or pot you have laying around. It's going to do the job. So this is a good size, not too big, easy to manipulate, comfortable. So just fill it up. And then you can go here on the edge of your gutters and then just give it some small taps. If you try to pour too much, you see it's going everywhere. So just be patient. It's not very long to fill anyway. So we're just a little short on soil for this one gutter here. Once you water, because it's dry right now, it's a little bit fluffier than it's going to be when moist. So if you go a little bit over, which we're going to do now, I'll show you what it looks like once we water it, but you'll see it's going to settle very, very nicely in the gutter and fill the space perfectly. All right, so our mini's all filled up. Took about 5 minutes. We used a little bit more than that tote I showed you. So one extra black cut flower container that we had to get from our pile of peat moss over there. But now we're ready to water it. So let me just show you guys how to water it, especially the first time. So you settle that soil in nicely and it doesn't move for the rest of the season, and it's ready to grow in. So water hose, water gun, get yourself a nice quality water gun. So yeah, shower function, turn it on. Now, you guys should not be staying like this in one spot when you water. That's valid for rain gutters, it's valid for anything else. Watering works much better in passes. So like this, and then go to the next gutter. Don't insist on the same gutter. Give it some time to absorb, to soak in that water, for that soilless mix to actually settle a little. So we've made our first pass here. You can see it's still glistening wet on top. So we're going to give it a couple of seconds to absorb. But yeah, if we just actually push soil like this, you can see that it's still super dry underneath it. So we are far from having reached the saturation capacity of peat moss, which is actually quite high. So we're going to do quite a few passes like this. And you can also see that it has settled quite a bit already. Now we're going to discover all of the air pockets that were hidden underneath. So there was one here, clearly, a small air pocket here. It's nothing major, but we know where we have to top up after that if we really want to have perfect gutters. Now I'm going to show you guys a cool watering trick with these vertical systems. I've been using them for a while, so I've had time to experiment and discover all kinds of things. Instead of doing one gutter at a time as we're watering, how about we do the 3 of them at once? So shower style. 1/3 of the flow goes to the top gutter, 2nd third goes to the second, and the 3rd one goes to the bottom. So this is how you water 3 rain gutters at low debit using a watering gun all at once. All right, so our gutters have settled in very nice. They're moist all the way to the bottom, which means we are ready to plant. So I've grabbed a couple of strawberry plants that have survived from last year. They're actually runners, so we're going to consider them first-year plants. And we're going to plant them in. So this is what we have. Now, because we have root balls and everything attached to these plants, I've taken this, usually made for growing plants or actually starting plants. So we're going to put the extra soil in that dome, and then once we've actually put our plants in, we're going to refill with that extra soil wherever is needed. So let's just grab. We're going to put our first plant in here. So I'm just going to grab a handful here, just empty this to make it easy. First plant, so that's a pretty large one. That's why I actually took out so much soil. That's a pretty large plant. Make sure all the roots go in. And then you can actually just refill around. So guys, we have actually just planted our first plant of the season out of the 16 or so thousand we're going to plant. So I have not received my order for the farm yet because we're not ready to plant them there. But I wanted to make this little tutorial and show you guys how it's done, so you can get started at home because the season's actually pretty nice this year. So normally this is a 5-foot section of gutter. We usually plant 20 plants in a gutter, so we would need to actually put in 10 plants. At 10 plants, we're going to give them 6-inch spacing, which is about your hand. So get your hand in there, and then the next spot should be about here. So again, just remove a chunk, put the plant in, make sure all the roots are underground. And that's it. If you're using plants from the previous year, by the way, make sure all of the dead plant matter goes away, because this is an entry point for pests and disease and so on. So I'm going to plant the rest of the thing. I'll show you guys what it looks like in a minute. But basically, yeah, that's our first strawberries of the season. All right, so done deal. We've planted our first strawberry gutter. It looks really, really good. If you guys notice, we are flush with the soil line as far as our crowns go. That's basic strawberry planting 101 right there. But our plants are green, nice, they're shooting up. We didn't fit 10 in the top. I didn't count actually. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, oh, 9. Okay, so probably because I did not calculate this end here properly, and I must have like added an inch somewhere in here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. My name is Khaled, known as the Plant Charmer. I show you guys how to do this, which is vertical farming like you can't find anywhere else. And this is going to make you go from good in the garden to triple awesome. So keep it green. I'll see you next time, and get growing.